perfect timing. Just got back from work. Hey dog. Play Valorant? No, we're not playing Valorant today. Hi. Hello. Hello. Hi. What's up? Hello. I'm procrastinating again because I have stuff to do and I wanted to record, but then I can't because there's construction outside my house. So the most that I can do is just turn on stream and say that I'm working because, you know, that's working. I also had a bunch of meetings today. It sucked. I'm tired out of my mind. I'm chilling. It's a Monday. You know how it be. I'm just trying to have a good time. You know what I mean? Anyway, what's up? What's up? How's everyone doing? It's 3 o'clock right now, 3:20 p.m. on the West Coast. I hope you guys are doing all right. I am just trying to find the right type of vibe, dealing with some weird internet shit again. I probably have to figure out what the hell's going on with my ISP, and then eventually I'll figure out whether or not I can play Valorant and stream at the same time. Who knows? But you know what? I'll play X Defiant probably Wednesday right now, because that's my plan. That's my current plan. Tomorrow is Apex with Aster and Realma again, and another thing, hopefully in the afternoon-ish. Little surprise. And then a relink. I'm gonna play some. I'm gonna start a new save on Granblue Fantasy Relink, on Thursday, just about. Because I don't want to play Valorant for a little bit. I need a break. I've been grinding a little too hard lately and I'm tired, which isn't to say that I don't like the game. It's just that I'm a little tired of the game. I'll probably play a little bit with Aster on his stream, but I'm not going to stream myself. You know what I mean? So, you know. Claude and Leo, my new favorite Valorant duo. Dude, I love that duo. Dude, Leo is so fun to duo with. Those games were hype as hell. It's been so long since I've found someone who I've been able to like a duo with who's like, not to say that we're on the same level, because frankly he's like 10 times better than me, but like to be able to finally duo with someone in comp on this account, I'm like, this is awesome. It felt great. So, you know, I've been very, very excited. And I'm so glad I was finally able to play with him. I mean, I feel like the both of us have kind of admitted to it. We both watch each other a lot. You know what I mean? He says he watches my streams. I've been watching him since he debuted, and I was like, oh my god. So when he finally DM'd me to play, and I was like, you know, I've talked about this already, but you know, I'm very happy. He's very sweet, very nice. He sent me a very nice message after, and I was like, you know what, hit me up whenever you want, homie. And I was like, awesome. Yeah, and you know, honestly, it's like it's the small things there, right? Like I finally have someone who I can just be like, hey, you want to play, and then we can play. And I think that's awesome. Yeah. But the collab yesterday was fun. Shoto, Lucian, Uki, everyone was really fun to play with. We had a good time. Good games out there too. Even like I think that was strangely enough one of the few games or few collab sessions where it's like it doesn't matter if we lose. Genuinely, we did our best and it felt great to play. You know what I mean? And I think that is probably the coolest part about it. We did our best. And we came out of it, you know what, feeling, you know what, we tried. And I think that's awesome. I think that's the best part about it. So yeah. Yeah, it's Monday. Easy as that. I just want to play new games, to be honest. I have a lot of backlog of games that I want to go back on right now. We got finished Persona. Maybe I don't really want to play Doom anymore, but you know, maybe I'm gonna bring back Mega Man on my own time. I might just play it off stream because I miss that game a lot. And I want a new, I don't know, man. It's been hard because I want a new, like, has there been any like new campaign, new like single player thing, FPS wise, that's come out recently? I'm waiting until Ultra Kill gets a new update. I'm waiting for a couple other ones right now. So I'm like, have you eaten? I just had lunch a little bit ago. I got my chicken and rice, and I'm chilling. Yeah, I'm looking for something more along the lines of like, say for example, like Titanfall 2. You know what I mean? I want like a new FPS new campaign style FPS. And I think that's what I want right now. Elden Ring's DLC is coming out soon. I don't know if you wanted to play Elden Ring though. I mean, I don't want to. My save is off stream, so I can't really do that. How was your day? My day has been okay. Just a little tired. Going a little slow right now, just because I came out of a meeting and had my food, and now I'm like, I have to wait until noise levels die down before I can record, and then I can chill out. And you know, I recently, last night I watched Inside Out. That one Pixar movie about emotions and stuff like that. And I can't believe, man, why the hell they gotta kill Bing Bong like that? why they gotta make Bing Bong have the hardest line in the entire movie, man? I think that was oh my god, I was like pretty like, oh, this is like a standard Pixar movie. And then they had to kill off Bing Bong. And I was like, come on. I don't know, man. I lost it when he said, take her to the moon for me. And I was like, no way. That shit got me fucked up. That shit had me a little emotional. And I was like, damn. So yeah, Bing Bong, my beloved. Thank you, Aha, for the 1 month. Not the spoiler. Hey. No, I refuse to count this as spoilers solely because if the movie has been out for more than at least a year or two, then it is free reign. It is free domain. That is not my problem. Okay. This movie has been out for years. So there should not be an excuse for it to be a spoiler if you you can go into it. And keep in mind, you can rent this on YouTube. You can buy this on this is on Disney Plus. You know what I mean? I count this as a listen. You cannot claim this is spoilers if you have every ample opportunity to watch it on your own. Okay. Are you gonna watch the second one that's coming out? So the reason I watched it was because Finana was like, Inside Out was such a good movie. Inside Out 2 is coming out soon. And I was like, oh no, she was like, it's coming out like next week. And I was like, oh, okay. And then she's like, I want to watch, like, she's like, she was like, you should watch it. And I was like, okay, sure. And then, dude, she messaged me like after the collab and was like, it was like, ha, ha, you know, the typical ha, ha, ha. And then I was like, what do you want? So we watched Inside Out. No, and that was it. So yeah. Why the hell they gotta kill Bing Bong like that? Coming out next week? No, apparently it's like this Thursday. So then I was like, oh, cool. So yeah, honestly, like I haven't watched movies in a while. I really only watch it like, I think most of the movies that I've watched recently have been with Finana only because like, one, we're just interested in like similar things, and two, like I just don't really have a drive to go out to the theaters recently. I think I'm gonna be though in theaters next week. And I think that's where I think that'll be like the next movie I'm watching, to be honest. Mullet Magic? I'll take a look at that one. Ooh, this does look cool though. So yeah. Dude, I watched the Haikyuu movie last Friday. It was so good despite not being a Haikyuu girly. I love Haikyuu. I don't really talk about it too much just because I'm not like as I'm not in the weeds about it, you know what I mean? But like definitely I think Haikyuu is one of the few series that I've genuinely like, you know, I've felt a lot of emotions for it. Specifically during a lot of scenes. I think anyone and everyone cannot tell me that they did not like tear up a little when the first, like for example on Hinata's first receive, or when oh my god, Tanaka's cross shot, Tanaka's line shot, like those scenes alone I think genuinely incite such crazy fucking emotions. And I don't know, man, like even for people who aren't very like super into like sports anime, I do highly suggest anyone to go into Haikyuu, because you don't need that much of an attach or like knowledge of like volleyball in particularly, or sports in general. Like I think you can go into it and kind of invest yourself in these characters and, you know, what their arcs are, watching them grow together. And you know, that level of friendship together, I think is really, really nice to watch in the show, not necessarily having it be about sports, you know. The Minari, I think of the 5 months, Haikyuu, my beloved, for real. It's like you can feel their genuine passion, honestly. And I think that's another thing, right? Like, I feel like that's something you kind of find, it's hard to find in a lot of different series. I genuinely love, well, I talked about this yesterday too, right? Like, there is a point in time where you kind of just like to watch people who are very passionate about the things that they do. And there is like a genuine drive for them to want to improve because it is simply just something that they love. And, you know, I don't know. I think about that, and it's something that I want to try to like put into the things that I do as well, because ultimately, what is truly better than wanting to put in the time and effort into doing something that you like to do? So yeah. I really want the next season to come out. I'm watching the VNL to hold me over. I wanted to watch the film today with a friend, and we both ended up crying. Yeah, I feel like everyone just ends up crying. But that's just because it's so like intense and you're so like emotionally invested. Living through them for real. I think that's one of the few things, right? Because it's I think that is one of the cool like aspects of anime, or even like not even just anime alone, but like most media in general, right? More specifically to sports anime, because it is that feeling of living vicariously for them. It is that feeling of being so you are very like cheering for this person in particular because you want to see them succeed. You want to see them just win, right? And the second they do, it's you're just so like elated about it. Yeah. But it is the other feeling, right? Like I think, and I liken this to Valorant, but I'm obviously not going to play today, but I guess it's more of a continuation of the topic from yesterday, right? I think the reason why like Valorant for me is so big is because it's that competitive nature of the game itself, and having that ability to, you know, work together with other people to want to win something, to want to push for that next round, to start minimizing mistakes, to look at myself and perform the best that I can in a way that says, hey, I did well, right? And I think similarly, it goes into literally any other thing that I'd want to do for myself, right? I think about it a lot, and I feel like Haikyuu has a lot of like life lessons that you can kind of take away from it, or just in general, like, you know, I still think the whole idea of doing it every day and doing it right simply because it feels right is the one thing that I think anyone can take away from Haikyuu, especially. And I took that away, or rather, that is one of the biggest lessons that I've really been trying to put into practice in the last couple of years, and even now more so, because, you know, I feel like that's just, it's easier to live that way. You know, I feel like there's so many things that kind of add a lot of complexity to life that ultimately makes it very difficult, because you're trying to think about all these different factors, all these different things. You're trying to think about being results oriented. You're trying to imagine what it might be if I did this, did that, you know. And there comes a point in time where once you're bogged down with too many thoughts about whether or not you're doing the right things here and there, or rather like worrying about whether or not this is the right thing to do to get to this outcome, blah blah blah. You know, I genuinely think that simply doing it because it feels right, I think has been something that's changed my life for the better, for sure. Do you have any interest in the Beyond the Bet DLC coming out for a Date with the Death in December? To be honest, I've not looked too much into it. All I know now is that Jonah Scott is now the voice actor for Casper, which I think is awesome. And I have not touched the game in a while. To be frank, I've been busy, so I kind of have not thought about it too much. I'd probably come back. I'd probably give it a shot, but you know, frankly, because it's already voiced, I'm not too sure if I'm gonna go into it, but we'll see. Can I watch the movie directly even if I haven't seen the TV anime? Probably. Ohayou gozaimasu. Is there any specific quote from a movie or from some kind of media that has stuck with you? None off the top of my head, to be honest. None off the top of my head. I think I really can't think of anything in particular. Yeah. Oh, man. I'm in that weird mode of... in that weird lull of, like, exhaustion, but also, like, I still just want to talk, and I think that's That's fine. I've been talking for like hours on end just because I've been in meetings, but you know, being able to talk about just anything right now is probably the most important thing for me. Are you ready for Dark Unite and Fight this month? And hell no. I've been slacking the past like 4 or 5 weeks. Dude, I'm so behind. I have one Celeste one Celeste glove only. My Magna 3 is not there. Like my grid is fucked. So, I don't know. How was gym today though? It was okay. I didn't do much today though. I'm taking it easy. I might go a little harder tomorrow in the morning, but I genuinely need to, I don't know. Maybe it's in due time that I take like a quick break. To probably take my quick 1 day off and then come back into it a little better. Yeah, Sendai, good morning. Good morning. Popotan, thank you for the member. Welcome in. Good morning, good morning. What time is it? 何時間日本に I don't know if you adjusted in other streams. How's your wrist? My wrist has been better. I've been doing a lot more exercises to keep it healthy. Stretching a little bit more before I actually do a lot of different exercises. And I've been like trying to implement more of like in between games, doing like a lot of like stretches too. So it's been better. It's been better. I've also shifted the way I play a little bit more, and I'm using more of my arm and less of my wrist. I'm actively trying to make that effort to, you know, put that into practice, get more used to that feeling. Thankfully, yesterday was a good example of that, right? Like I switched mostly entirely to using my arm, and it's feeling a lot more comfortable, but it's definitely requiring me to be a little more involved and like focusing on it. So I'm trying to take the time to try to let that be less of a thing that I'm actively thinking about. You know what I mean? 仕事行ってきます。いってらっしゃい. It's good to hear. Yeah, and I don't know, man. Like I think ergonomics is something that I've been actively thinking about too. Ironically, that leads me to another thing. I've been talking, or rather not talking about, but I've been watching a lot of videos. I've been thinking about this pretty recently, of changing up my studio space, or quote unquote studio space. Because I've been watching a lot of like those like minimalist studio videos recently. Like I like watching a lot of those like minimalist creative studios where, you know, it's very clean, very sleek. Optimum Tech is always a good example of that, where it's just the PC, very clean desk and nothing else, the essentials. And I've been thinking about that more recently because, you know, I've been cleaning up a lot of my shit. I've been trying to like get rid of a lot of stuff. I'm trying to downsize super hard because frankly, I've got a lot of stuff. And I think there's a lot of other things that I'm like, more particularly because I have a lot of like, there's a lot of like stuff from artists and like a lot of friends that I've had over the years, merchandise stuff that frankly, I just don't want to let go of, but I'm having a hard time finding a place for it in my space. I only really keep out like a couple things because those are things that genuinely mean a lot to me. But as for the rest of it, you know, it just takes up space. And I've been having a hard time trying to figure out where or how I'm going to get rid of it, or if I give it to someone else or whatever it might be. But that being said, you know, I am trying to find new ways, or rather, new acoustic panels, because obviously if I shout too fucking loud, it's like super echoey in the back, or like to my like, well, southeast side. You know what I mean? Only because that corner is like completely untreated and it's really annoying. So anytime I record anything like super loud, or if I'm like trying to belt, or if I'm trying to scream, that reverberates really badly and it gets caught, unfortunately. And I've had many, oh my God, I've had many, more recently too, especially after getting the TLM. I've had people ask me like, hey, can you re-record this? Only because that has been an issue. So I have to retreat some stuff. Even with like my quote unquote like vocal booth, it's been a little annoying. So yeah, it's a little annoying, but you know, I kind of roll with the punches. If I have to edit out in post, I usually just edit out in post, but you know, it's been something I've been actively thinking about. So probably some new panels that I need to get in, and then I should be good for a while. Other than that, you know, I've been thinking about, I don't know, man. I try not to think about too much about, you know, should I do this, should I do that? Only because like, I don't want to spend the money. You know, I just don't feel like it's necessarily like a good use of my money specifically, because I just don't need it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need a new computer, but I'd like to build a new computer. It's that thought. I think recently, because I've been talking about like ITX builds and stuff like that. I've been watching a lot of like those mini PC cases, and I high key just want something that's like a little small. You know what I mean? I want something small that I can like either take portable or something that's a little quieter, more specifically quieter, because I would like the fan noise to be at a minimum. You know, I want to do something that's like a really cool personal project that like I'm like, you know what, I put in the time, this is really cool, I did the research, and I think that's kind of my thought process for like the next project I want to do. PC building stream, I don't think I can do a PC building stream necessarily, but I'd love to do something that is like inspired by what, you know, you guys, for example. Like, I would want to do like a custom like minimal case, but have like aspect, like I'd want like a small ITX case with like maybe some sort of like engraving with like from you guys. You know what I mean? I think that's what I've been thinking about. Needs versus wants. You're allowed to spoil yourself sometimes. Just make sure you don't go broke over it. Yeah, I think that's been nice though. Like I've been. It's crazy to say, and I think that's probably the biggest thing. I'm finally in this position where I can kind of go and satisfy my wants without going broke. You know what I mean? Like the fact that I can even say that I'm relatively stable now is fucking astounding to me, because frankly, maybe like a year ago I was on the verge of like having to move home with my parents. You know what I mean? Like I was on the verge of like shitting the bed, and I was like, oh, you know. Thankfully, hey, but now I got 2 jobs and it fucking sucks, but whatever. I'm so scared when I build my PC, but it's really entertaining. I think it's funny because everyone in EN pretty much only like, I think me, Shu, and like a couple other people are like the only ones who really like build our PCs. Everyone else like buys pre-built. And I think it's interesting to say the least. But, you know, I do like building PCs. Like PCs are genuinely like a lot of fun. I think for me, like tech stuff, all things tech, all things audio, I'm not too big on keyboards. I love mice. I love mouse pads. Just everything about it is really awesome, you know? I think it's such an interesting industry, especially with things hitting this point of not saturation, but we're hitting that really like high end plateau of like things can only really get like incrementally better. And I think because of that, even the mid range of things is like exponentially better than what it was maybe like 2-3 years ago. You know what I mean? So I think it's really cool. I think it's really cool that a lot of high performance stuff is readily accessible now in comparison to how it was maybe like 3-4 years ago, and it's kind of awesome. I had someone build my PC. Like I paid for the parts, but I let someone who knew how to build it do it because I didn't want to fuck it up. I mean, but then again, like you do it once or twice and then you kind of learn to not fuck it up. You know what I mean? Like I think that was the biggest hurdle that I think a lot of people kind of run into of, you know, they're not comfortable doing it themselves. They're not comfortable putting in the parts themselves. And I kind of get it. But ultimately, you're not going to be able to get over that fear unless you kind of watch and learn and then do it yourself. And I think that kind of gets you in that mindset, or of, you know, maybe I can do it. You know what I mean? Honestly, I watched a 20-minute YouTube tutorial on how to build one, and I can do it solo now. It's a lot more accessible now. Exactly. Right? Like, it definitely, I think YouTube has opened like a number of doors for pretty much everybody to learn how to do this on their own. And frankly, you know, I think, I understand the fear of it. I understand the fear of like, oh, I'm going to mess it up. Oh, I can't really do this. I genuinely think that you ask someone like, hey, someone who does know, not necessarily to do it for you, but like, hey, can you help, you know, teach me how to do this? Or, hey, can you make sure I'm not doing this right? Or, hey, can you just help me out here? But I still want to be there to like help do it. And I think that helps alleviate the fear, that alleviates that barrier of entry for you to kind of go into it and learn it. Guiding you through the process is a very good example of it. Yes, that is true. YouTube has been a good tutorial for me in terms of cooking and baking. Exactly. And I think that is like, you can kind of do literally anything now. We're in this part, like in this age where anything and everything, or information in general for literally anything and everything, is so readily accessible for us to learn and kind of apply in our own domain, so to speak, you know. And I genuinely think that, you know, because of that, literally anything's possible. albeit you kind of need to learn how to learn and like find the right information necessarily, or to do the right level of research, which I mean is no small feat by any means. Like I genuinely think that, you know, there is a lot of fluff to a lot of things. There's a lot of things that aren't nearly as useful. There's a lot of information that is more specific to people who all have very unique cases and aren't general knowledge, you know, and I think that's okay. But learning to kind of discern that from the main lesson that you're trying to take away from it is a skill that you kind of have to nurture over time. Stack Overflow, exactly. I mean, granted, I will admit, hey, for anyone in like a STEM degree, you know what I'm talking about. Dude, trust me, trying to find the right level of code for like the singular thing that you're trying to fix, you know what I mean? Don't even get me started when you're trying to fix a fucking multi-threaded HTTPS server, and then you're trying to figure out what the fuck is going on with your getting when you have a GET request that's fucking broken all of a sudden. Trust me, I get it. All right, I get it. Important question, how's your cable management? Not the best. It's only really good for my audio cables, but for my actual like PC shit, it's kind of dog shit. Man, let me tell you, I know. Never, like, listen, I'll never run back. I will never go back to learning multi-threaded programming or like having to do that shit in C. Don't even get me started. That was abysmal for me, and I do not want to go back. As a historian, I would love to look for online stuff, but unfortunately, a lot of stuff is stuck in archives. Thankfully, people are getting with the times, and digital archives are a thing. I think that's interesting to say the least, because we are in that position where finally getting things digitally archived is such a it's pretty important, I think. Because obviously physical media, well, on one hand, I don't want to say that physical media is like lost media, quote unquote, but it's definitely getting more difficult to get their hands on physical media. And if anything, similarly, like that access to information has always been difficult because it's been barred by needing to get this book, needing to get this transcript, needing to get this or that. And having it being available online makes it, or I do think that it allows for not only, I think having it open to everyone, anyone and everyone can open a lot of opportunities for a number of academics or scholars in general to ultimately bolster whatever the fuck they're trying to do, you know? Physical media is starting to go away. I think it's interesting to say the least. I'm more of the mindset of like, I kind of wish that physical media is going to stay a thing. I think similarly, like I really like physical game cartridges, and albeit I do only buy digital on my Switch, I really liked it when I had to buy like a CD or a DVD for like my PlayStation 2 or like a PlayStation 3. You know what I mean? I think that would have meant a lot more to me, because ultimately it's like I really felt like I owned a game. You know, I really felt like I owned a game and I could play that whenever. So, you know, for me, that's where I'm like, you know, I really do miss it. I really do miss it. Apparently we're getting super big discs. I don't know. I think it's interesting to say the least, of people owning things like record players and stuff like that. But granted, like it is nice to see that it's still a thing, quote unquote. Physical media is kind of more limited and not as easy to access, though. I think it's also because the level at which media now and the sheer size and depth of it is unfortunately cannot be, and while it sounds crazy, to be contained on physical media, right? You know, there is no physical medium necessarily that can have some, or like contain, quote unquote, that level of like fidelity, so to speak. And it's very difficult to find something that kind of does that. For example, it's similarly like, in order to get the full experience of like something, or of like lossless fidelity, you would need to pay something like $5,000 for like a crazy ass speaker, or like to have this full on setup, you need to have a subwoofer, you need to have monitors, you need to have this or that. And the only real way you can like feasibly do that or play back something that's lossless would be on like a PC. And you can't really do that with something like vinyl anymore. And I think that's interesting. I think it's interesting to see, you know, how far it's come, but it kind of sucks that we're at that point in time that in order to reach that level of quality that we lose out on physical media. But it is interesting to say the least that, you know, that vinyl is on its way back. You know what I mean? I think that is a very, very cool thing. I think it's awesome that we're still keeping up with that. And frankly, like, you know, it does make me wonder because I feel like I, at some point in time, kind of want to go back and do, you know, I want to play, not play, but I want to visit like a record store. That sounds like a weird thing to say. But I'd love to go to like a vinyl store, check out some new music, check out some, you know, if anything, like I like the idea of going to like a music store, checking out vinyl, like whatever they got, talking up the staff, being like, hey, what's up? You know, what are you into? Blah, blah, blah. And frankly, like, I think it's a good way to also connect with, and for me at least, like I believe in the idea of connecting with your community and finding new people to kind of share that interest with. And ultimately, you know, whether or not they like actually working there, you know, I think it's still cool to kind of get their idea or their input in general of like, hey, you know, this shit's a classic. This shit is, you know, fire. You know, that's a collector's piece, stuff like that. And ultimately getting engrossed in the hobby of that physical medium. Trends come and go, but nostalgia's forever. True. To some extent. I've never honestly seen or liked any stuff like that, so I really want to see it in stuff at least once. I think that's another thing, right? Because you never feel it until you feel it. I think that's one of the few things that I've kind of recognized over the years when it comes to specific interests, right? Of you kind of hit that point in time where you go into a certain thing or a certain hobby or whatever it might be, and there is that feeling of like it clicking, right? It's that feeling of this is really cool. I want to do this again. And there's no way to like ultimately describe that to someone other than that specific feeling that they themselves need to understand or they themselves need to feel, right? And again, I feel like I've always gone back to this idea of like, you know, finding a passion, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like I'm a broken record. Ironic, like pun fully intended, broken record about it. But, you know, if anything, I feel like that's one of the few things that I'd love for people to be able to do at some point in time is to kind of find that spark for themselves, find that spark and ultimately move forward with that, be able to continue with that, be able to kind of take that and run. Because I think it's nice to watch someone lead fulfilling lives. And I think it's nice to feel like I am doing the things that I love to do. Yeah. Letting my child, when that appears, start off with an NES, SNES and a CRT. Damn. Honestly though, low key though, I would love to play. Okay, low key, Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix on a CRT. All right, that's all I'm saying. That's all I've been thinking about recently. Is all I'm saying. You know what I mean? So true. Kind of hard to describe it other than I really love collecting this. Today's my birthday. Yippee! I want to say thank you and the OUTCLAWS for being such an awesome gang to vibe with my free time. I hope to celebrate many more birthdays with y'all. Much love, Remini. Thank you so much for the shupa. Appreciate it and happy birthday. Immaculate vibes, TVH. I think it's vibes are always up. The goal is to keep the vibes up. You know, even if some shit happens sometimes, I think it's always important to keep the vibes going. Remini, thanks for gifting another one as well. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great birthday, by the way. I'm currently an apprentice at an archive, and we're all trying to make digital copies of physical archives since a lot has been lost due to the lack of professionals doing preventive conservation. I do think that's another thing to think about, right? Like ultimately, we still need to actively make that effort to not lose out on pieces of history, and moving into the digital age is equally as important with recent time. I don't know. In my mind right now, I feel like I sound super preachy. I don't know what it is about it. Like even if I'm speaking like super frankly, I feel like it's just because it's a different vibe today. I feel like I'm in that, you know, weird feeling position of like, I just want to talk about like stuff that I've kind of just been thinking about, but in a way that's not like super silly, over the top goofy anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's just been how I've been. I don't know, man. I've been in my feelings. You know what I mean? Fuwa no neko-chan. Thank you. So super chato. Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you for the soup. I appreciate it. We getting deep? I don't really know if it's like deep necessarily. I feel like it's just been a matter of trying to find ways to properly talk about the things that I want in a very articulate way. And I think that's been an exercise. Like, this is more so an exercise for me to kind of think on the spot and improvise the best that I can in order to properly convey the thoughts that I have about specific topics, right? It's kind of difficult because ultimately it requires me to actively process and think about information in real time, quote unquote, while also making it palatable to literally anyone and everyone, only because I feel like and I'll label this as like my common use words, right? Because I'll mostly I swear and I'm very casual with a lot of things, but given that, you know, my quote unquote like surface lexicon essentially is very small. And I think that's been one of the few things that I've been a little conscious of lately, where trying to make that active effort to kind of be more eloquent with the words that I use, to try to be a little more articulate. And it's not something that will inherently come with me just thinking about it, as opposed to actively trying to work on it and trying to talk about it. But I think that's the not the caveat, but you know, that's just the aspect of like public speaking that I think a lot of people kind of tend to overlook, especially, right? Even beyond within presentations or even beyond in meetings themselves, you know, being able to communicate in the way that you should, or in order to come off the way that you want to. It's really all about, you know, the vocabulary that you use and the delivery that you have. Inflection is very incredibly important, and ultimately you're not going to get better if you don't do it actively, or if you just don't do it at all, right? It's crazy that things from 2000s are considered vintage. I think similarly, well, I mean, if anything, like anything pre-2000, I think is interestingly quote unquote vintage. But you know, the fact that anything pre-2010s now is starting to hit that point of like, oh my God, that's dated. You know what I mean? I think that is the interesting part about it, because frankly, pre-2000s, you know, it's the thought of, I grew up with this stuff. And for me to feel like, you know, the things that I grew up with that was really awesome in my mind is now considered old is a crazy thing. You know what I mean? The thought that the original Wii, or even the GameCube in general, you know, is considered vintage is like, wow, you know, that's weird. But even then, like, I know a lot of people who are, and I would say older than me in this case, would probably not consider, you know, the Wii vintage by any means. But definitely, like, you think about someone who's probably like born after like 2004, 2005, you know, and they see the Wii, they're just like, oh man, that came out when I was born, you know? And that's such a crazy thing for me to kind of comprehend, the fact that they will not have that same level of investment in something like a console because that just wasn't in their time. You know what I mean? So it's a crazy thing. It's a crazy thing. But you know, to a certain extent, it's a very interesting case study on what it is, rather of, you know, a look at what Gen Alpha is going to look like, or rather how it's looking like right now comparatively, only because, you know, it's different. I think because the level of computation, the level of technology, and the level of how entertainment has changed over the years, it's so crazy to see how things have changed and how people are growing up now. They're doomed. I mean, it cannot be doomed. It just fundamentally depends on like how trends kind of change over time. And I think ultimately the idea of like short form content has, and I don't want to say plagued necessarily, but it definitely has impacted the way people have consumed media, consume media in general, to an egregious extent, I think, actually. I don't know, man. I'm not the biggest fan of short form. I, for one, am a very active advocate for long form video essays. I will watch Summoning Salt day and time and again. I will watch an hour-long, not expose necessarily, but I will watch like H-Bomber Guy about plagiarism. I'll watch literally anything that is like just interesting to watch and has a depth of research that I think you know, really expands on a topic that I think is, while it might not be my cup of tea, the sheer amount of information that goes into this and the sheer amount of research that gets not explained or extrapolated, but it's mostly like, you know, the amount of effort that goes into it really shows the depth of knowledge that people have over specific things, right? And I think that's the interesting part to me. Also, what's up, Lero? What's up, Weewa? What's up, Weewa? I'm not playing League of Legends, but dissect that. I love our guide to cognitive thinking on general knowledge this morning. Things I don't really, well, I don't know, man. This is a very like loose-ended, just I talk about what I want to talk about right now, and I don't think that's necessarily, I don't know, man. I don't want to say that I'm really like crazy about it, but you get the point. You get the point. I think I'm simply just talking about things that I'm thinking about too. Yeah, that's fine. I really miss when they used to have a CD-ROM in your laptop. Oh, I'm not crazy about that, to be completely honest, but you know. I think short form comes from a lot of things. The rise of TikTok and lockdown really messed with kids' brains, and now we have kids who have a hard time sitting in a classroom. I think ultimately it is true, to the extent that our attention spans have been like intensely reduced as a result of it. And I do think like for me personally, I think that's why I made the active effort to kind of just not consume as much media anymore. That's why I got off Twitter. That's why I got off YouTube. That's why I got off TikTok. That's why I deleted Instagram. I deleted Facebook. Like making that active effort to kind of remove those pieces, like those aspects of social media that are kind of tailored to capture my attention span and to keep me occupied for like hours on end. I watched recently, there was the one short from Dr. K about, you know, distractions, where before you get distracted for like a minute or two and then you go back to studying. Whereas now phones have made it so readily accessible to a point where, you know, one distraction can turn into like an hour of distraction. And I think that is a thought that I've had about it, where that is very true. You know, it kind of has that moment of, oh, I saw this thing that seemed interesting. I'm going to watch this now. And that's 5 minutes. And then 5 minutes turns into 10 minutes. And 10 minutes turns into half an hour. Half an hour turns into an hour. It's exactly that. It's exactly that. And I think that has kind of changed my perspective on a lot of things recently, because it's just the fact of, you know, maybe I need to pay a little more attention to the impulses that I have and to pay attention to where my attention kind of goes over time. Longer content also helps with media literacy in comparison to short form IMO. I do think that's true, because ultimately short form, I think, is simply just a surface level. I give you this piece of chicken, right? Whereas I think there is so much more, like there's so many different aspects of a very flavorful chicken, right? And that ultimately comes from understanding seasoning, cooking technique, where the chicken comes from, how to prepare your chicken, blah, 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 blah. You get the point, right? It's the fact that there is a level of depth that I think exists for literally anything and everything on the internet that I think a long form, because it delves so much more into, it allows people to kind of understand things to an even greater extent that they would from like a short form TikTok randomly out of nowhere. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not crazy about shorts. I'm not crazy about shorts, and that's just my thing. But you know, I feel bad for kids who are literally 10 and below. Like the internet influenced so much that they care about looks now. I wouldn't say to that extent necessarily. I feel like that's a meme that has unfortunately risen past its boundaries to a certain extent. Like I think people kind of falling into the looks maxing trend is, I think, a very like isolated thing. I don't know to the extent that it truly has been, but I do think that it's simply just a fad that I think people will get over at some point in time. I never looked back after deleting TikTok after lockdown. There was something mindless about it that I personally didn't want to fall into. I think that's a very reasonable thing to do. And frankly, like I also, I think the other thing, the important part about it, or about this in particular for me, is the fact that I am not innocent by any means. Like I used to have moments where I scrolled TikTok for like 2-3 hours at a time because I just didn't want to fucking do anything. You know what I mean? And I think that mindlessness was something that I was very guilty of, and it felt bad because ultimately I would come out of it feeling guilty about not doing the work that I should be doing, simply because I'm just distracted. I just didn't care. And I do think because now I've already experienced it, I kind of have that feeling of I have a lot of like quote unquote lost time to make up for, but actively making that effort to make up for that lost time, I think has been something that I can at least feel proud of. Me making the effort to do so is nice, and it's motivating to really go back into it, or motivating to continue to just do things with intent. Yeah. 10-year-olds are more into skibbity than looks maxing. Yeah, I feel like people are into more memes as opposed to like trends. But I mean, granted, I don't know what the fuck is going on with most quote unquote, like I don't know what's going on with the youth. You know what I mean? I don't know what anyone's like. Listen, man, I don't know what some random 16-year-old is into now. All I can really think about is whether or not I am doing my job. I think ultimately we as a society need to bring back spaces for kids to be kids. I don't really know what would that necessarily entail. I'm curious to see what we have, like what is the concept behind that? Like, do you mean like playgrounds outside? Do you mean like places for people to just have like do things recreationally? Is it meant to be like parks? Is it meant to be like libraries? Because frankly, I do think people should be a little more adamant about actively utilizing public infrastructure. And frankly, when I do say like, it kind of sucks that most cities and most counties don't really invest as heavily into them anymore. I do think they're still there, but unfortunately, it's just that we've now driven ourselves into this this era of being inside all the time and being on the internet all the time, and that's the unfortunate truth of it, you know. Safe public spaces for kids. There are spaces for kids, playgrounds, indoor playgrounds, rec centers, parks. Parents just need to take them there. I think that is the other thing about it, is that I feel like parenting has become a little okay, I can't speak on this. The problem is I can't speak on this as I am not a parent, right? It's difficult for me to have the proper perspective because ultimately I think the way that the work, like societal changes, are very difficult to kind of discuss, only because it's not something that I can fully say that I understand to this extent, right? But however, I do understand as a working adult the extent at which, you know, we are all busy people. We are all doing our own thing, and ultimately we are all preoccupied with having to do our job, to make sure we have enough for rent, to make sure that we can pay our mortgage, to make sure that we can put food on the table, to do all these different things. And to the extent of, I can understand why most parents kind of just say, hey, here, have the fucking iPad, go ahead, right? Because it's an easy solution to not burden ourselves with more mental struggle, right? Because obviously you need to think of ways to take care of this kid. And on one hand, you can say that this is quote unquote like lazy parenting. At the same time, it's you can kind of understand from the perspective of the parent of, God, I just don't want to deal with this right now because I'm just exhausted. I think adult life is just not nearly as simple as it was in the past, given the change in everything and how much it takes to kind of survive now. And I think that's more of a thought experiment where, you know, it's just not simple anymore. You need to actively think about, how can I pay rent this next month? How can I make sure that I cover my mortgage? When do I need to worry about my stocks vesting? When do I need to worry about, you know, having to sign on with this new company? When do I need to worry about getting a new job? When do I need to worry about making sure that my salary keeps up with inflation? I don't know, right? There's just too many bigger problems that I think people are actively having to think about that ultimately makes it all the more difficult to add, you know, a family into it. And I feel like because the internet is such a source of easy entertainment for children, or even like a distraction. It's like Cocomelon basically, right? Like you just toss on Cocomelon and they're done. They're distracted. I don't need to worry about it. I can do my own thing. So, you know, that's my outlook on it. However, that is to say, you know, parenting's not easy. My parents weren't like, did not know what the fuck they were doing. And frankly, it was the same thing. You know, it was just, here, go play this video game. Here, go watch TV. Go do this, go do that. I didn't really spend too much time with my parents. Like I spent a lot with my grandparents, but I didn't know shit, you know? And I think that's one of the things where it's just changed so much so to where with the access to digital media, it's so much easier now that we're slowly seeing the shift in attention span of it being smaller and smaller and smaller, because that is just the level that's how media has kind of transformed itself from long form essays, from documentaries to a TikTok that's around like 30 seconds. So yeah, I don't know, man. Lots to think about, lots of commentary about a whole bunch of shit, but you know. Blind leading blind, basically. Yeah, but I do think there is a level at which I think that, you know, once people start opening themselves up to different things and you know, being able to be a little more open-minded about a whole bunch of things, you can kind of lead yourself in a way of, you know, I can understand and I can reasonably or like in retrospect, I can see what my parents did wrong, and I feel like I want to not do those things. And it's an active effort, because there's the unfortunate truth of you kind of emulate the way that you were raised, because that's just what you were used to, right? That is something that you yourself kind of fall back on because, say, for example, my dad did this when I was growing up. Therefore, when my kid does this, I guess that might be the right thing to do. And it's a natural tendency, unfortunately. And it's something that I think a lot of people kind of have to actively kind of stop themselves from doing, or actively recognize this is wrong, or this is not the right thing to do, because ultimately this is something I look back on and I feel like, hey, this messed me up as a kid, and I don't want to kind of impart that on someone else. And they didn't know any better, right? My parents didn't know any better. And it's probably just because my grandparents didn't know any better, right? It kind of sucks because ultimately I am the oldest of the oldest of the oldest. You know what I mean? Like it is that level, that cycle, but ultimately it comes down to eventually realizing how can you kind of break away from that? In what capacity can you kind of learn from, you know, the previous times that this has happened? And ultimately, can I make that difference? It takes effort and courage. It's a lot of effort, a lot of courage, and just active effort. I think that's another thing, right? Effort's one thing, but actively trying is probably the biggest part. That's why I'm afraid to have a kid in the future. I think a lot of people are afraid, and I think that's reasonable to do so. I would just say, like, even if you're afraid, like, I think because even like just putting in the thought of, hey, you know, is there something that happened to me that would necessarily happen to the next generation? And can I do anything necessarily to not make that happen? You know what I mean? I don't know. I feel like I'm, dude, I don't know how this is like thinking about just this hour, this entire hour is so surreal to me, because I feel like I've just talked about a whole bunch of stuff that I kind of frankly it's weird that I've never touched on this. Or at least like on a stream. I feel like it's kind of crazy that I am today of all things. I don't know, man. It's weird. I'm like, you know? How do we get this stuff? I don't know. We haven't even, like, the fact that like we haven't even, like, I don't even know, on a random Monday. Yeah, no less. On a random Monday where I just got out of a work meeting and I'm like, I just want to talk about stuff, man. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with me. We went from bing bong to deep talk. Yeah, I think that's the funniest part about it. Take her to the moon for me, I guess. Dog, we just love yapping? I guess so, we are. What the hell, man? Hey, if we can't do Valo this stream, it's fine. I know, that's what I'm saying. I'm just here to talk about shit. We love Yapmark. Crazy that we've returned to Yapmark. Master's degree in Yapology. I would not say that. Listen, I may have a bachelor's in Yapology, but I'm not I do not have a master's yet. This is a yapping safe space. Exactly. To a certain extent, this is simply just me having to warm up my voice so that way I can record later. Because I have not warmed up at all. So being able to talk for extended periods of time without necessarily burning myself out is good practice for me to get some recording in later. So, treat that as we will. I feel that many times the best way to realize something is not right is when you leave your bubble and to meet new environments and new people. That is when you realize there are others. I think that, okay, I agree with this actually, only because and I've mentioned this in the past on multiple occasions. It's the reason that I go out and actively do things that challenge my own individual beliefs and individual perspectives on things is in order to kind of validate whether or not is the thing that I believe in the correct thing or the morally right thing or even the objectively right thing, right? And while that cannot be necessarily true, there is no like quote unquote like objective truth to anything. It's the sheer thought of ultimately, do I believe in the thing that I believe in strongly enough, and is there something out there that can potentially tell me otherwise, right? I think that is something that I will want to say to anyone. And even if that is to say, understanding that it's not going to be black and white either. It's never going to be the situation of like, this is right, this is wrong. You're always going to have that weird, not even discussion, but well, actually it is a discussion more so than anything. You're going to be in this interesting debacle with others because there will be some people who are very, and the unfortunate aspect of it is they're going to hold a specific set of beliefs, and they can be incredibly vitriolic. They can be incredibly angry, and honestly, it might be hard to kind of take that perspective in a conducive way because it's perceived as this is just like nothing. However, there are others who can equally so hold the same opinion, but be able to hold a very I'm trying to think of a word for this. To hold a much stronger discussion that can be very conducive to actually opening up your idea of it and being able to kind of understand their side a little bit better. But through understanding someone else's perspective on the thing, you yourself can then take that away and say, hey, even if, this is that side of that belief may or may not be true, I can still reaffirm whether or not like my personal belief is real for me. So yeah, it also makes me think if what I believe in, I just said that, legit happened to me when I left my hometown for uni, found out a lot of high school friends weren't the best type of people. Exactly. Because once you start opening up yourself to different types of people, different types of media, different types of studies, or different fields, whatever it might be, you find yourself kind of realizing the world is a much bigger place than whatever you truly thought it was, right? My shy self has difficulty with pushing myself past temporary discomfort, which would benefit me in the long run. I think that is something that you will eventually build up over time. You will eventually figure out whether or not you can make that step in the right direction. You will find that it is something that you kind of need to build up over time, and finding the first steps is always going to be the hardest one. Feeling uncomfortable, the first instinct is to kind of go away, to close it out, to stop, just don't interact. However, in order to do so, you kind of need to find a way to interact with it in a very healthy way. And being able to do so, what's the right way to put this? To find comfort in discomfort is the best way to put it, right? Also, Mini J, thank you for gifting the 5, appreciate it. Finding comfort in the discomfort, I think, is a weird oxymoron, but at the same time, you kind of get what I'm getting at. Being able to it's like kind of finding a foothold in like a mountain that you're climbing, basically. You find something that you can kind of springboard yourself off into the next step. Off into feeling like that discomfort, but ultimately coming out of it better as a result. And I think that's just one way to look at it, right? I understand being shy, and I understand that being a very difficult hurdle to get over, but I don't think that it's necessarily impossible. It's a non-zero chance at the end of the day. And I do think you can most definitely move past that level of shy, that level of anxiety, whatever it might be, and kind of take that step forward. Going out of your comfort zone gives you more opportunities to grow. I agree. And ultimately, I think that's why like I always want to push myself now more so to do things that I'm not comfortable with. You know, I never thought I'd be comfortable with doing karaoke at all. And frankly, here I am now. And that's something that I've been actively pushing myself to be more proactive about because I like doing so, right? It's so easy to box yourself into thinking your personality is only a certain way, and putting yourself in new situations can be so life-changing. Exactly. Even if like, and I want to expand on that, but frankly, I think that's at best. You know, like I think thinking that your personality is only one way is incredibly limiting. And I genuinely think that if you give yourself the opportunities to grow, then you will grow. You have an amazing voice, Lamau. I still listen to your cover on loop regularly. New one soon. My bad. But yeah. I think it's kind of crazy again that I'm talking about this much shit today. Like I don't know what's going on. Stepped out of my comfort zone a while back to make new friends through Discord servers. Comes with caution, obviously. Good. I'm so glad I did because I've made so many friends and new friends since. Interesting. I would also suggest and crazy to say, and if possible, if you can actively go out and make and again, this ties back to the beginning of what I was talking about of make more friends with the community as well, like your in-person community, because I think you will definitely feel a lot more comfortable in the space that you are living in. I think because I think the physical aspect of it becomes increasingly more important as time goes on. I think especially with I think with getting older, that's been an interesting one. You find a lot more solace in people kind of like seeing a person face to face and understanding that they are equally as much just an adult going through life the same way that you are. You know, I think that's why, like, you know, for me, like being comfortable with like people at the gym, being comfortable with my local coffee shop, being comfortable with my local taco place, being comfortable with, you know, the bike shop, all these different places that ultimately are, you know, albeit small facets of my life, come together to form that feeling of in-person community that I can still rely on when there are moments where I can't, you know, for example, sometimes like looking online, there's just shit that ultimately makes me feel bad. You know what I mean? Sometimes there's a lot of things that well, if anything, there's some pretty mean shit out there. You know what I mean? And that sucks. But at the very least, you know, I can just step away from my computer for a little bit and recognize like, hey, you know, there are people in person who I've had the opportunity to connect with, people who look at me for who I am and for simply being the person that I am. And I equally as much do so for them as well, that I can feel confident and safe that I, you know, am okay as a person. So, you know, having active communities outside, and while I will say, like, albeit not, and there will be no position where I will say being in part of like an online community is a bad thing. But I will say, hey, in-person community is definitely something that will drastically improve your life in a way that will let you feel comfortable being who you are. But it is ultimately about you allowing yourself that ability to kind of be comfortable doing so. Touch grass space. I mean, I don't want to dumb it down to touch grass. I think that's one of the few things where I'm like, I need to kind of step back from using just simplified overarching terms of things, because I feel like I don't want to dumb down the message that it's meant to send. I feel like you can obviously say, yeah, just go fucking touch grass. But ultimately, you know, me saying that holds no weight if there is ultimately no meaning behind that. And I feel like there comes a level at which people need to fundamentally hear how much like this truly can impact you for the better, right? So it's something that I feel like, you know, take the time to ultimately, and for me personally, like I like talking about really this for me is what I'm comfortable with. I actually really like talking in this way because, you know, it's what I'm used to. It's what I'm used to with a lot of other people. But unfortunately, there will be times when I'm playing video games. It's I just need to be snappy. I need to be fast. I need to be quirky. I need to be aggressive. I need to be blah blah blah. I need to be like this, that, blah blah blah. You know, it's very difficult to find the times to be a little more eloquent with the things that I want to talk about, and ultimately a little different from just like, yeah, fuck that guy. You know what I mean? It's difficult. It's a difficult balancing act because ultimately it feels like, well, rather there's like an interesting, like, not duality necessarily, because I feel like there's 3 or 4 sides to me that I feel like kind of exist, like, or coexist in a way that make me, right? There's me who's incredibly nonverbal and just does take care of my own business and does my own thing. There's the really social aspect of me who kind of goes out and helps his community, who actively goes to the gym, who actively volunteers, who actively tries to make the effort to do better each day. There's the aggressive FPS version of me, the very competitive side of me, who's you know, very snarky, who's very egotistical, who's very confident, who's trying to do all these different things and come off the way that it is with a different vibe. And then there's me right now, who I just want to talk, be very casual, be very articulate, and try my best to kind of indulge myself in a lot of different topics that I feel like have layer to them that I think can be expanded upon. Hey Claude, I really catch you live due to German time zones. I'm a VOD watcher, but I have you in the background when I'm going to town. You know, having a buddy with me and to not being lonely. Thank you for your work. Hey Felix, I'm glad, and I appreciate the super, by the way, and I'm glad that you put me on in the background. I'm just here to talk about a lot of things, and I'm glad that I can be your little travel voice in the background. So I hope you're doing okay. It's hard to balance relationships as well when you're heavily focused on yourself and your goals and maintaining your own mental wellness. I do agree with that, but however, that is to say, like, it really truly depends on how much those relationships, I guess. Ultimately, I don't want to say that relationships hold like no weight necessarily, but I do think that ultimately, and I will say, the people who you surround yourself with, I would always say, what's the best way to put this actually? Because I don't want this to be taken out of context necessarily, right? I think the people around you ultimately very influence you to a very certain extent, where I think you should always look to surround yourself with people who you genuinely believe and trust in, and ultimately who help you become a better version of you, right? I think there are moments where ultimately, like, I do my best to seek out people who I can learn from, people who can challenge me in a way, people who can tell me, you know, is there a way for me to get better? And I do think that it's difficult to find those people sometimes. But when you find the right people, and once you're, not to say that you should ever like toss people away, but you know, there will be times where ultimately you want to find people, actively look for people who can help better you, or yeah, actually better you. I guess that's one way to look at it. Holding each other accountable, exactly. You know, I think holding each other accountable is really, really important. And frankly, having that opportunity now, I think is very nice, because it means that if I myself am doing things to be better, I can only hope that another person who is around me is making that effort as well. Do you toward having many casual friendships or few deep connections when it comes to making friends? Because keeping a relationship is difficult. I think given a lot of things in the past like year or so, it's moved from a lot of casual friendships to specifically deep connections. However, I'm slowly branching out a little bit more again. I mean, I keep who I keep close, right? Like, there are genuinely a lot of people who I would believe 100%, people who I would support no matter what, people who I can always rely on no matter what. And it's nice to be able to rely on that. But at the same time, you know, there is a level at which, you know, maybe I do want to branch out again. There are points in time where I want to make friends with people who have different interests, people who want to help me expand my worldview. And ultimately, you know, now that I've been doing a lot more in person and going out and doing different things, I've been having a lot more casual friendships, and I think that's okay. You know, I think it's okay to have more casual friendships, but I think it's equally as important to keep those who you consider close. So it's a balance. That is to say, you know, I'm comfortable not necessarily actively going out and making new friends all the time, but you know, I I think for me, at least, I'm much more comfortable making friends in person as opposed to online. But I mean, that's given the nature of my work. You know what I mean? Like, obviously it's kind of difficult because I can't be super, super open about some things because there's a risk to it. However, when it comes to like an in-person thing, like I can just say like, hey, I like bikes, I like voice acting, and I like audio, I like gaming, I like Valorant, right? But that it's just to that extent. They don't need to know more than that. And they can just know me for the person that I am. Claude Clawmark, I am getting my ass handed to me learning law right now, and my classmates are so mean, so thank you for streaming. It makes my day. Leah, don't worry about it, and good luck out there, brother. Good luck. You're doing fine. You're doing fine. Trust. I've learned that as an adult, especially, being able to call out friends and vice versa is healthy, helping each other grows in value. But exactly. I think being comfortable actively, you know, saying, like, expressing discomfort and expressing that in a conducive way and allowing the other party to kind of understand, you know, hey, you know, for example, you know, something that you did kind of made me uncomfortable, you know, can you lay off a little bit? Or, hey, you know, that kind of made me upset. I'm not going to hold this against you, but I just want you to know, personally, that didn't, you know, it didn't sit well with me, and, you know, could you not do this again in the future? And having that open discussion with another person, I think, is equally as important, because you want to leave that door open, because you ultimately don't want to just cut off someone who you've spent a lot of time with and building that connection and relationship with, right? So being able to be open about that type of thing and to actively be like, hey, you know, it's just not okay with me. And for them to show, and ultimately this is a very interesting case of, you can now decide whether or not this friendship is truly something worth keeping, because that person has the option of being belligerent and being like, no, fuck you. Or, hey, you know, thank you for discussing this with me. I apologize and I respect your feelings, and I want to make the active effort to not do this again. Right? And it says a lot about a person. It says a lot about, you know, just how deep of a relationship you have with another person, and whether or not this is truly a bond that you want to keep around you. All I would say is to be able to tell the difference between casual friendships and people who are actually close to you. There's something I've had to learn a lot growing up. Yeah. Quick water break. Yeah, I do need water. I don't know, man. Am I talking too fast today? I probably am talking way too fast, but you get the point. The response to setting boundaries is a litmus test for friendship. And I think that's true. I think ultimately there will be breaking points. I think that's one of the few interesting things that you kind of find within relationships specifically of, and I don't want to say it's like deal breakers necessarily, right? But it is true. Like, I think if you want to be very layman about it, you can consider them deal breakers. However, that is to say, like, once you kind of find whether or not this person is respectful or whether or not this person isn't, it really helps narrow down a lot of different things. And it's nice to know that, you know, or not nice to know, more so, you can kind of find comfort in the idea that you can still resolve conflict with a person despite whatever it might be and still remain friends or have that relationship regardless. Joanna, thank you so much for the 6 months. I'm happy to be able to catch your streams again, especially your casual ones like this. It's always nice to listen to your thoughts. It's a comfort. Thank you, and I appreciate it. Friends on convenience are also a thing. Like, I was close with one guy, but once we both left our hometown and realized we were only friends because of how close we were geographically. I mean, that's true though. I mean, granted, that's why a lot of people kind of, when they move away from their hometown and people kind of expand their worldview, leave to go to university, move to a different state, move to a different country, whatever it might be. And ultimately you kind of realize the world's much bigger. I feel like there's, to a certain extent, I feel like a lot of my Zatsus, and this is going to be a weird meta thing not meta thing, but you get the point. A lot of the times, all these topics all segue, all kind of retroactively link back to each other to a certain extent, right? The overarching theme of this is to kind of just expand your worldview. and understanding that society has changed in a very interesting way, and much larger to an extent that we kind of just don't really understand. However, it's also understanding to expanding our view of, you know, what it's like to be an adult, what it's like to hold relationships, what it's like to be passionate about something, what it's like to do this or that. And the way that I've always viewed this, and to a certain extent, is kind of the way that a lot of stand-up comedians do it, of kind of linking back to the original bit, the punchline linking back to the original joke. And that is to say, not while this is not necessarily is like a comedy stand-up, it's kind of looking back and retroactively linking each discussion point to a previous talking point, which I think is interesting, because I feel like they all kind of go hand in hand together in a way to kind of show that, you know, these things are all interlinked. I've had a hard time setting boundaries with my friends because I never want to disappoint them, but if I'm constantly bending over backwards for everyone, I don't have the time for myself. Ultimately, I do think it's just not to say that you should be selfless necessarily, but I think you should take care of yourself before you take care of others, and I think that is something to hold true. There are a lot of times for me, at least, where I introduce my friends to my sibling and then they gradually start talking to my sibling more, and that's mostly why I lost touch. I mean, that's fine though. I mean, you realize that if people click, and that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, ultimately, if my friend is friends with my friend and they are better friends together, then, and I'm like not necessarily super in the equation, that's fine. You know what I mean? They just had that connection. They have that spark, and I'm okay with that. I go off and do my own thing. It doesn't change the fact that I can still interact with them individually or even together. That's okay. You know what I mean? I'm still here to do my own thing. I'm still here to stay in my own lane. But ultimately, hey, good for them, right? With what I hear from people leaving their hometown, discovering more of themselves at uni fuels me to go away and try to even study abroad through my major. I want my character development. Okay, and I think that's understandable to do. Ultimately, I do think it's a very cool opportunity to have to study abroad, for example. I really wished I had the chance to do that, but ultimately, you know, just unfortunate. But I mean, if you have the chance to, I would say go for it, right? Worst thing is reaching out to old friends to catch up only to be left on red /delivered /3, but all at last we move on QQ. I mean, granted, like, you can shoot your shot, but if they don't respond, they just don't. I mean, but granted, I'm in a similar position. People reach out to me and I just don't respond, but not because I don't like them, but it's straight up because, like, I just don't, like, I'm either too tired to, or it's an entirely different conversation to have that I just am not ready for, or I don't have the mental capacity to. And that's the other thing about it. I think for me, at least, when it comes to responding to specific messages, I want to give them like 110% of my attention when I do so. And ultimately, because of the nature of my job right now and the nature of both of my jobs right now, it spreads me really, really thin to a point where I just am so mentally exhausted to respond to a casual message or whatever it might be out of the blue. You know what I mean? And it sucks to say, but it's one of the few things that I actively have been trying to kind of make an effort to stop doing, and to just be like, send the quick message of like, hey, you know, sorry, I didn't catch that, or hey, I appreciate the message, you know, let's talk some other time, or hey, I get it, you know, stuff like that. I think for me personally, like, my mental stack is very, very not complicated, but it can get really congested more often than not, to where even in like the middle of conversations, I will suddenly just stop responding because I'm thinking about so many different things at the same time, and it's very difficult. I think that's one of the few things that I've needing to change, because I just can get lost in thoughts every once in a while. Dude, oh my God. Fiona gets so mad at me about this because there are moments where she's like asking me something and I'll just stop responding for a second. And then she's like, stop dono-walling me. And I was like, okay, come on, man. I literally just like freeze up for a second. I'm like, huh? But, you know, and that's not to say like it's like an exclusive case here. This is just more so because this happens like pretty often with her, but and it's mostly my fault. It is entirely my fault, but that's literally just because like I actively am like thinking about different things here and there. Also, Eden, thank you so much for the 5. Haven't been able to catch a stream in a while, but grateful if it's this one. You have no idea how much your talks bring me comfort and assurance to me. Thank you, Eden. I appreciate it. I hope you have a good day and don't worry about it. For me, it's difficult to socialize sometimes, like casual smooth talk. I'm amazed by my friends of talking. I don't really know necessarily what we really say in terms of smooth talk. Even then, for me right now, right? Like, I don't even consider myself a smooth talker by any means. And if anything, you guys consider me just Claude Clawmark. I think that's pretty much it. All I really do is just talk. And I don't really consider it smooth either by any means. Even then, like, I mean, you don't see, I guess that's another thing. And I guess I won't say that smooth necessarily has to fall under the, oh my God, flirtatious category and stuff like that. But at the same time, you know, I'd like to imagine that, you know, I happen to just say a lot of things that I don't know if carry a lot of meaning, but at the same time, it's enough to fill the space. I'm guilty of ghosting an old high school friend, but that was because I knew that we wouldn't get along like I used to and didn't really want to open things back up. And that is completely in your right to do so. Having trouble reconnecting with some friends after basically muting from a rough time. I mean, again, that's a very time-based thing. Ultimately, if you are having like a hard time kind of getting back out of your shell, you just need to give yourself the time to do so, but you still need to actively do things to get out of your shell. You need to maybe like say a couple words here and there, maybe move on to like a conversation, and then eventually longer and longer conversations as time goes on. But ultimately, it just takes that step one. It's almost 2 a.m. and I'm doing my literature project on the brothers. I don't really know, man, but good luck. Good luck. Even me and my best friend just get in touch only if needed. We do ignore chat too if needed, but we stay for years, and she's still the most comfortable and know me best. I mean, that's the same for me. Like personally, like my personal best friend, we like barely talk as is. But you know, if I ever need something when I'm back home, like I know I can trust him with whatever it might be. And frankly, like me and him have been through thick and thin, and genuinely, I trust him with everything. He's been my day one. He's always been supportive about like all of my creative hobbies. And genuinely, I know if I know someone's got my back, I know it's him. You know, and that's fine. But even then, we don't talk like on a daily basis. He has his own sets of friends now, and I have my own set of friends too. And there's nothing wrong with being able to, you know, not talk every day, or, you know, being able to connect at some point in time is just fine. You know? Does he know you're a silly PNG man? Not necessarily. Who knows? He's always been my day one, though. It's always been my day one. Me and friend groups, due to our understanding of each other's personalities, we're okay like that? Yeah. You know? There was another train of thought that I was gonna go on, but I kind of forgot like immediately. But you know. Okay. They don't know I'm a VTuber, sits in the corner. I mean, it is true. That's kind of how it is in most cases for me, at least. My best friend could yap his head off. Could yap our heads off in person, but barely text each other. They're still one of the closest people I know today. Yeah, and I think that's fine. I think ultimately everyone has different ways of like holding that connection with one another, and frankly, I don't think any friendship or relationship is going to be 100% like mirror match perfect. You know, like there will be conflict here and there. There will be some small differences here and there, and I think that's okay. I think that's okay. A friend of mine is still reaching out to do stuff, but we don't really click, and it's hard to not feel like the bad person. I mean, but that's okay. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying no. I think saying no is such a reasonable thing, because ultimately you don't want to put yourself in uncomfortable positions, or like there's a difference between like getting comfortable with like new opportunities, but there is a difference between like ultimately just being uncomfortable, period, and not letting it be conducive to anything. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's reasonable to say no to. You know what I mean? You don't have to force yourself for some things that ultimately you just don't feel like you're going to gain anything out of, or is going to really change anything. Conflict and the ability to resolve it in an unhealthy manner only strengthens friendship IMO. Yeah, that's true. Well, adulting is when you realize you can't combine all your friends and it's okay. Yeah, I mean, you can have separate friends for all your separate sectors, and I think that's perfectly fine. You know, not everyone has to know every aspect of your life, and not every friend has to be with another, like a friends with another friend of yours. I don't know, man. I think saying no, learning to say no is a very important aspect, or important skill, if anything, that I feel like a lot of people kind of overlook more so than anything, because ultimately, you know, it can get you out of tough situations. It can put you in, it can put you, like, prevent situations. It can do all these different things, and that's okay. It's okay. Learning to say no can feel bad, but I think leading them on thinking you're still friends is worse. I do agree, but even then, like, well, I think learning to say no is just equally as, like, it's not to say that you're leading them on necessarily, but you're just saying no because you just don't want to do it. If you don't click and you don't want to do it, just say no. But you don't need to just straight up tell them, like, I am leading you on as a friend. I think that's just adding that's kind of like starting something that you don't really need to start, more so than anything. You know what I mean? Hi, Claude. オレンジさん、日本から応援してます。おはようございます。Unnecessary, yeah. What are your thoughts about switching personalities for different friend groups? Because I've been trying to be consistent with my own personality within my new friend groups, and it's like kind of freeing. I mean, okay, you're talking to someone who has to code switch literally every day, so it's kind of difficult for me to really say, and frankly, I can't really speak on this the best. Only because, hey, you know what I mean? Like, I, for example, am a completely different person online and offline. You know what I mean? To a certain extent, right? There's some level of similarities, but at the same time, like, I'm a very different person here right now talking to you as opposed to how I am when I'm at the bike shop, or how I am when I'm at the coffee shop, or I'm at the gym, or blah, 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 right? It's very different here and there, but at the same time, that is to say, like, I think being true to yourself is equally as much more important. And if the true self is that personality, then I think it's a-okay for you to be consistent with that more than anything, because ultimately, I don't think you should ever have to, like, lie about who you are as a person to other people in order to appease another person. So, yeah. Sometimes different people just bring out different sides of you, and that's okay. Yeah, that is also another thing, another aspect of it. My friend, when we hang out, always wants to explore NYC, but I'm in the process of losing weight, so NYC is a lot for me, and they don't respect I can't keep pace. Any suggestions? What do you mean necessarily? Like, is it difficult for, like, in terms of, like, walking, or is it, like, difficult in terms of, like, food? I'm a little confused what we're talking about today. Like, if you're going to the city, like, what does that entail necessarily? Because I think you're well within your right to say, like, hey, I can't do this, and that's okay. Or, hey, I'm not really down for food or stuff like that, and I think that's okay. You know, don't force yourself. But at the same time, like, you know, make sure, like, you can do your best, but at the same time, like, understand the limitation. It's interesting to hear your and chat's thoughts. More interesting because we're from different parts of the world. いつも応援してます。Amane-san, thank you so much for the new member. Appreciate it. Mami-san. Thank you so much for this. Not the soup up. Thank you for the membership. I keep mixing up like a whole bunch of different things at the same time, but I appreciate it. Thank you for the 2 months. Walking. I mean, if you're in the process of losing weight, okay, I can't really speak on this too much because I'm not a cardio person. 2, I'm not really, I can't, again, I'm not a health professional, so I can't ultimately give you, like, solid advice about this. But I will say, like, I think NYC, for example, like, I can't really give too much because I don't know NYC all that much. I don't know anything about that. And I don't know the general vibe of the city in general. So, for example, and I can only imagine that the pace is, like, very, very fast. You know what I mean? Like, you always got to be walking, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, if you have to, like, if that is just the flow of the city and you can't keep up, you just have to say, like, hey, I need a break here and there. And you kind of just need to be very open and honest about it. But you need to be able to kind of say that in a way. And that's one of the few things that people aren't very receptive to. One of the few things that I think can get obfuscated is complaining too much and in a very whiny way, because I think that just makes people annoyed, right? If you're tired and you can't really keep up, but you kind of like whine and then be like, oh, come on, slow down. Like, I hate this. Like that doesn't really help their case, right? Like for them, they're kind of just like, okay, you're just complaining and I'm tired of this and I don't want to deal with it, right? Whereas it's like being very open, just like, hey, you know, like this is kind of difficult for me. Like, can we like slow down like a little bit? Like like, unfortunately, the truth of it is there will be times where people can get upset about these things because ultimately, and I will admit, sometimes we can be fucking annoying. I think it's like, I think it's ultimately like we need to be open about these things, but in a very like, hey, like, please, I would appreciate it, but please. Where's the just the guy sticker? God, true. Learning how to properly communicate your feelings, accepting is equally important. It's hard to be okay with friends that want to be friends with someone that does not like me, and it hurts more, but because they're my best friends. I don't know if I'm being beaver. Wait, what? I'm sorry. What? It's hard to be okay with friends that want to be friends with someone that does not like me, and it hurts because. Oh, okay, I get what you mean. I mean, honestly, again, if that person doesn't like you and your best friend wants to be friends with that person, that is completely in your right to say like, hey, that person doesn't really like me. I personally am not cool with being in their space. If you want to hang out with them, do so on your own time. I don't need to hear about this. I don't need to know about how you're spending time with that person. Because frankly, that's none of my business. You know what I mean? Keep your peace. Keep your peace because frankly, if that person doesn't like you, I don't give a fuck what they're talking about. I don't really care what their business is. Even if you're my best friend, I can respect your decision and your judgment to like not fuck me over. Because listen, I'm out of your equation. I do not care. I am uninvolved with you guys. And if that person doesn't like me, then they should equally as much like not want anything to do with me, man. Right? I'm out of that. I'm out of that. You do you. And I'm going to do my thing. Easy. Real and true. Real and true. It's a big fear of being an intrusive person for friends. I mean, granted, I will admit you lose that the second you start realizing I'm staying in my lane. I think that's one of the few things that have ultimately made this like significantly easier for everything. It's just you kind of stop caring about what people are thinking or what people are doing. Once you realize I am in my own lane, I am in my own zone. I am doing my own thing because ultimately, what people do outside is none of my business unless it directly affects the things that I'm doing right now. And then I will have to say something and then I'll have to do something. But realistically, if it has nothing to do with me, all right, cool. Not my monkeys, not my circus, whatever the thing is. I don't even know what the saying is either, but I mean, I'll take that at face value. People are never satisfied, so just go do your own thing, TBH. Yeah. It's fun to live in your own little world. I also agree. I do think it's like, well, not delusional, but you get the point, right? It's literally just I'm chilling. I'm on my own shit. What do you think before yapping? Nothing. Nothing. I just talk. I really just talk. And frankly, like I can only really speak on things that I experience myself or actively have something to think about. But even then, like I don't talk or I don't think too hard before I start talking, to be honest. No thoughts, just yap, easy peasy, right? Word vomiting. I try not to be word vomity though. Like I think the one thing that I've been trying to like, stop myself from doing, and I talked about this earlier, of kind of improving my surface lexicon, is to be much more proactive about thinking what I'm going to say before I say it necessarily, which is very contradictory to what I just said. But when it comes to the topics themselves, like I don't think about these topics beforehand unless I really have something to say about it necessarily. So a lot of what I'm yapping right now, it is more so a very big improv act of like, okay, this is what I think about this thing, but I mean, hey, I need to think about the best way I can say it in like the real time or like that millisecond before I say it, right? Lexicon and SAT word. If anything, I feel like SAT words to a certain extent have kind of helped me, but at the same time, I'm not going to use like everything, right? What if the brain is empty? I mean, I still brain empty, but I mean, I just come up with like, I mean, that's why I just do a bunch of impressions for fun, or I happen to just think of something really goofy, funny, and then hopefully like pray for the best that it kind of hits or it doesn't, you know? It's one of those few things where I'm just gonna be like, all right, I have this bit, I gotta pray. Good luck. Straight from the dome, very authentic. Yeah. You'll never see me freestyling, but I'll freestyle yap, not rap, yap. That's kind of just the way it goes, right? I wish I can speak more smoothly, but I feel like I get caught up trying to remember the perfect word for what I'm trying to convey. Again, that's not, what is it? I think, again, for me right now, I'm literally just doing my best to actively think about like, hey, what is the word that I can use to replace this? Or keep going, right? It's like that. I mean, frankly, it's a matter of practice more so than anything, because it is a very trained thing more than anything. It's something that you need to pretty much do time and time and again, and ultimately you'll get much more comfortable with being able to say things better or better convey what exactly you're trying to say in either more like quote unquote like eloquent words. I guess eloquent, again, I don't like using the word eloquent too often, because I feel like if I say it too often it gets overused to a point where it loses its meaning, right? But you get the point when I say it's something that you'll trip up pretty often, and not everyone speaks smoothly right out the gate. Not everyone has that level of like public speaking until you do it time and time and again. And communication is something, it's more of a muscle than anything than it is like really like a skill. Because there will be a point in time where your own communication skills or your verbal communication skills can really atrophy to a certain extent. Like that, it is a level at which you can kind of see where it will lessen over time the less that you do it. That is infinitely more important to recognize, that the reason why a lot of people find it very difficult to even communicate with one another, especially during lockdown, is because of that lack of face-to-face communication, right? That lack of ability to do so, or that lack of opportunity to do so, and for people to practice, to actively do it. That was a big loss. And now that's why people kind of communicate in like skibbity toilet or like skibbity phantom tech, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Because we're so conditioned by this, not to say there's like a level of shame to it. It's this fact of like, it's so accepted of like internet slang lingo to kind of be brought into regular conversation. And to a certain extent, and I don't want to say that shame is a very big aspect of it, but I think the feeling of like embarrassment in a conversation when you say a piece of internet slang that just doesn't make any sense or doesn't land, or it's not ubiquitous anymore, it kind of incentivizes you to actively think about what you're going to say before you speak, right? So I think, you know, the public speaking is something that, or it just is like a core tenet of communication that you kind of need to actively practice. So I'll say that much at least. So there was someone who said, is that how you learn to talk the way that you do? Originally, and for what it's worth, I did not learn how to talk all that well until like middle school, just about. For me personally, I used to do a lot of like debate. I was doing a lot of public forum, basically. I did like Model UN. I did a lot of different things. I'm trying to remember. There was like another one. I think it's like Lincoln Douglas. I haven't done that in years, but you get the point. Like I used to do a lot of debate stuff. I used to do a lot of research and related things. On top of that, you know, doing a lot of like radio stuff too was important. It kind of drives you to talk a very specific way. And I don't know, man, like I kind of grew into that level of like public speaking where I had to learn how to do it the best that I could. Yeah. Debate, I was part of debate for a couple of years. Wasn't great. I'll tell you that much. But you know, I can only do my best now. So yeah, there's your little lore drop. Whew. Yeah, going to a mock debate trial competition really forced me to be sound confident when publicly speaking. You have to. Delivery is the most important part. You got a great speaking voice. I don't think I do, but you know, that's just me. And I will always say I don't, but that's, you can always, I feel like everyone's going to disagree with me no matter what I say, but that's okay. I've just learned to accept that. Currently not able to go out as much as I want to, so I try to speak to myself whenever I'm alone so I don't forget how to use words, and especially remember to not always use online slang words. I do think that is true, and I think ultimately if you are going to go out and interact with other people, especially in a professional setting, you need to be able to, you know, you need to be professional and you need to have that vocab. Like for me personally, one of the few things that I actively have to think about is to not swear when I'm like in a professional like work meeting, basically. It's always difficult, to say the least. I'm not innocent by any means, because I always run into this all the time. You know, I do it a little too much. I gotta stop myself. I always have to think before I do. When I'm on stream, I don't think. When I'm playing games, I don't think. But when it comes to like where I have to, yes, I do. One of my classes had a public speaking portion. We were supposed to limit our stuttering as much as possible, but my stuttering kept coming through. I mean, that comes with nervousness and preparation. I think one of the things about being nervous, especially for specifically public speaking, is the level of preparation that you have before going into whatever it might be. For example, if you have a speech that you need to say, practice and rehearsal are quintessential. You will feel much less nervous the more prepared that you are. Going into that speech, ultimately, you're going to only be as good as the average of all of your rehearsals that you've ever done of that individual speech. Hey, and maybe you might come out and say, hey, I did this. This was literally the best delivery I've ever done. Out of nowhere. And that's simply just because you were locked in, you were in the zone, and you were there. Right? But more often than not, it's just going to be just an average delivery that you've done time and time and again. And you're not nervous because, and I've said this before about video games too, it's second nature. You don't need to think about your delivery because you've done the delivery. You've done it again and again and again. You understand how the placement of this word is going to be, where I'm going to accent this, what type of message am I trying to get across. You don't need to think about any of those things because you've already thought about it beforehand. You've already actively practiced that. And it's second nature. The only thing you need to think about is, hey, you know, am I at the right volume? Is there a crowd reaction? Did I do this right? Did I do this not wrong? You know, what is the response? That is the only thing that you're probably thinking about when you're actually like presenting at the time. But because you are only thinking about that, you're not thinking about everything else that goes into that preparation phase. And your mind is a lot clearer. The clearer that your mind is, the less nervous that you'll be. if you have the chance, you just need to be practicing to a point where it is second nature. That's why I every time, and I've talked about this with my aim, right? The reason that I play Valorant to the extent that I do is solely because, or rather like I aim the way that I do, is because that is second nature to me. My main focus is on what strategy I'm going to be doing. It's less about what am I doing with my aim and actively thinking about what I'm doing with my aim in the heat of the moment. Right? The mental stack becomes clearer. You are less nervous. You're less stressed. You don't tense up nearly as much because you have less to think about and you have one thing to focus on. And it's much easier to do the thing you have to do when you're thinking about one thing than 5 things, right? So there you go. I hope you guys can take that with a grain of salt. I hope if that means anything, just practice. You know, you don't have to be nervous. Just practice and you should be fine. And it extends past game mechanics. It extends past literally everything else. Sometimes my brain is already prepared and commanded things, but my physics don't cooperate. Well, I mean, but that's the unfortunate truth of it, right? Sometimes it just doesn't. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. That doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to do it again. That doesn't mean, you know, it's your only chance. It doesn't mean anything, right? It's just if it doesn't cooperate, it doesn't cooperate. Go next. There you go. So yeah. I hope you take that with a grain of salt. I hope you guys can live with that. I don't really know what else to say about that one, but you know. I was listening to you while working. I feel like I'm listening to a positivity speech. Love that. Thank you so much. I got you, Lily. No problem. I have the opposite problem. I can't study things from memory and rehearse them. I need to understand the topic and be able to put it in my own words. It helped me with teaching at least. But that's fine. I'm not saying, well, no. The thing is that you're not necessarily doing it from memory and rehearsing them. I mean, that is a completely different set of situation. Right? If you're memorizing a speech word for word, that's different, right? But if you are doing something and actively doing it and you're understanding a topic, you are doing just that. You are still rehearsing that. You are rehearsing the act of understanding this topic or being able to recite this topic or be able to teach this topic. And if you are actively teaching this topic time and time and again, then you yourself don't need to think about how I'm supposed to teach this topic anymore. You're just thinking, how can I teach this topic to the best of my ability for this person to understand? You're thinking less about how am I delivering this, but more so about how is this person reacting to this? And how can I get them to understand that? And then I can move more reactively as opposed to the initial response of what am I doing? So it's not necessarily the opposite problem because you're doing the same thing, just in a different circumstance. Most cases, a lot of the lessons that I'll say and a lot of the things that I talk about are very overarching, very general. And the point of it being is that it's not meant to be a very concrete, like this situation only, this situation only, this situation only. Most cases, these things are like plug and play. You can probably fit in like 90% of like most scenarios without like super strict contingencies into this quote unquote formula, and it'll still be relatively the same. You just need to figure out how does it fit necessarily into this framework. So, yeah. The point of it being is that, you know, it's applicable in like most cases. And I'm not going to say that these things are very strict in a way that they're very like, it has to be this way. A framework is just an overarching thing that you can kind of use to determine whether or not, am I doing the right thing? Am I following this? Am I following that? Or can it really apply to this situation? But ultimately, it's not on, you know, it's not on anyone to really say like, it has to be this way. And unless it is like a very strict, whatever it might be, like you yourself have a way to kind of figure out your own path for yourself. And ultimately, these are just suggestions at the end of the day. I heard formula and had math flashbacks. Don't say math, because you know what happens when you guys say math. Watch out, guys. Don't say math. Solve one equation right now. Hey, don't tell me like that. I would. Don't play that game with me. Math isn't real. It's very real. I don't know, man. It's summer break. Ooh, not for some people. And summer break isn't real anymore once you're an adult. Summer isn't real once you have a job. Math, please think you walk for 6 months. I wish I had summer break still. I also wish I had summer break. I wish I didn't have to ask for PTO. I wish I didn't have to ask for sick days. You know what I mean? I wish I could just have like months on end where I didn't have to do fuck anything. But you know what? It is what it is. And now here we are. Here we are. Thank you for your and chat sharing Kangai. What is this? Kangai bukai desu. Sorry to veer off topic, but do you feel more comfortable wearing boots or sneakers on a long trip? Because I will on a 16-hour plane trip. I just wear shoes, dude. I don't have boots. Well, I do have boots, but like I don't have like travel boots. I guess. I don't know, man. I just wear my I got my Adidas on. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm joking. I mean, just wear whatever's comfortable. I think boots are a little uncomfortable on planes, at least. So, you know how it be. Watching your stream is like attending a seminar that the speaker is your older brother. It's comfortable, light, and but relatable way. I think it's interesting. I actually haven't been to too many seminars now that I really think about it. I'm very adamant about, ironic to say, I really like creative work seminars. So the one lecture that I really liked actually, we're gonna go on some like nerd shit real quick. The one that I watched recently that I really liked actually was by Jack Conte, the CEO of Patreon, called "The Death of the Follower and the Future of Creativity on the Web." I think that was such a good lecture about discussing, you know, what it's like to be a quote unquote like true fan of like a piece of media, or you know, the idea of inflated like subscriber counts or whatever it might be, or the idea that, you know, even for like a number of things, at the end of the day, if the people who are consuming your content, quote unquote, are not feeling or coming out fulfilled or gaining anything, then ultimately it is a baseless number. And I think it's a very interesting topic because it reshaped the way that I kind of view the way that I kind of deliver a lot of messages, or the reason why I talk about a lot of this stuff. Only because, you know, it's a discussion about how can I provide more value from just my spoken word in terms of it being in a stream, for example. On one hand, I think that is the other reason why, like, I can just play Valorant silently for hours on end, right? But that's another reason why I actively make the effort in order to kind of explain concepts and explain mechanics, explain strategy, explain agents, to explain why I play Cypher the way that I do, to kind of change up the way that I do, and to say like, hey, this is why I do this Cypher setup. This is why I'm going to change this because they're aggressive on this site. Stuff like that, right? Ultimately, what can I do to kind of change it up, and what can I do to provide some value to the things that I'm doing whilst, you know, doing the things that I like doing, right? So I think that it's an interesting one for sure. Yeah. I don't know, but it also reframed the way that I kind of learned to consume media too. More so that like I only subscribe to things that I actively follow. I don't have a watch history. I don't have an algorithm. I don't have this or that. I literally only subscribe to channels that I actively watch videos from, and I will go back and watch the videos. I don't look to feed an algorithm. I don't look to do this. I don't look to do that. It's quite literally, I will only subscribe to channels that I will watch time and time and again, because ultimately I know that they will give me something that I will enjoy, give me something that I can go back to, and give me something that I feel like I can always look forward to, right? So I think that's, you know, ultimately reframing the way that you kind of view just not content necessarily, but you know, the way that you consume a lot of things. And I think that's a very interesting conversation on its own. But maybe one day I'll do like an entire, like, not too like educational video on Valorant. Maybe one day I'll do an entire educational thing on like AIM. I'm not good enough for that yet, and I think I want to get to that point where I can. I think a good channel for it is Discourse. Discourse is an awesome channel about you know, she is an incredible like top 10 aimer on like a lot of the aim benchmarks and stuff like that. She has a lot of videos about, you know, how it's translated to a lot of different games, what it's like being top 10, all these different things. Similarly, you know, there's just so many different things that I'd love to be able to do and hopefully provide value at some point in time, but give you guys a reason to want to look forward to more, right? So yeah, PowerPoint night when? Ooh, I don't know if I get PowerPoint, but you know, no math. I don't think people are ready for me to start doing more math. I also feel like I would miss out on other stuff, like kind of be behind on what's going on if I deactivate the thing. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? If you like, what is, like, that is just missing out on whatever? You know what I mean? I think that's one of the few things of why would you feel pressured to feel behind on anything when you're kind of just consuming what you want to consume? I don't really feel the need to be caught up with anything unless it's something that is genuinely important to me. So it's something for you to think about a little bit more, but you know. FOMO's real. I don't think about FOMO as much as I used to. But when I was young, well, not even younger, maybe like even a year ago, I was still pretty on that FOMO train. You know what I mean? I was mega on that FOMO train. If anything, FOMO is the reason that NIJISANJI is a thing for me. You know what I mean? FOMO is the reason that I kept trying to apply for NIJISANJI. I think that is the truth. One of the biggest things. It is true. Like, you will feel FOMO from time to time, but at the same time, like, ultimately removing that from yourself is a big step up, if I'm being real. I will admit it became a driving force for me, but at the same time, I think it did hinder the way that I enjoyed doing things. You know what I mean? So now that I no longer really feed into the FOMO, I can still relish in the things that I consume even more so now. I don't know, man. It's the same way how I always say, like, you know, like, I run on spite sometimes. Like, if people like shit talk me, I'll do my best to prove them wrong, that I prove that I'm good at the game or whatever the fuck. Then yeah, fuck that guy, right? But ultimately changing, like, it's a nice temporary motivator to say the least, but at the same time, there is a level at which determining what is your intrinsic motivation and what your intent is when it comes to actually consuming whatever it might be, that I feel like is much more important than feeding into that temporary motivation. And in this case, FOMO. Kari, I think you're getting 5. Do it for the plot equal to I make my plot. Yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the things, actually. at the end of the day, like, am I here to just simply prove someone wrong? Am I here to just feed that narrative of I'm here to prove someone wrong? Or am I ultimately just doing this because it's what I want to fucking do? That's actually really good. Feeding into the plot versus I make my own plot. I am my own main character. Also, Weiroo, thank you so much for 6 months. How you been? Thank you. Yeah. All right. I don't know if there's anything else that I can really... It is now 5:30. 8:30 for those of you on the East Coast. I don't know if I'm gonna keep yapping, if I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if I'm gonna keep talking, because I feel like there's, I feel like people got stuff to do. You know what I mean? People got stuff to do. And I, for one, need to do a bunch of recording, and I also have to do stuff in a bit. So may I ask for tech yapping stream in the future? Like, what tech yapping? Because I feel like this might be a little specific, and also I don't know. Listen, unfortunate truth to say, sometimes the girlies don't like listening to my tech talks. I know, because this goes in one ear out the other all the damn time. And then I'm like, God damn it, you know what I mean? I'm joking though. I will say I will do another tech one in the future. Don't worry about it. Listen, don't worry about it. I'll talk about the tech eventually. Don't worry. I'm joking. Don't worry about it. Okay. Anyway, thanks for listening today. Honestly, I mean, if you guys want to come back to this VOD and you want to listen back to whatever it might be, hey, I feel like I've talked about a lot of stuff today. I feel like I've said a lot of what I would imagine to be quote unquote like pretty constructive things, I hope. So, hey, you know what? If you want to come back to this VOD, be my guest, talk about it, show your friends, blah, 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 whatever it might be. I just hope that you can probably take something away from this and live your life better. You know what I mean? Because tomorrow, I think you can be a better version of you no matter what. I think you're doing fine. And you can be fine. Okay? Thumbs up. Thumbs up, as per usual. All right. I'm gonna go. Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing. Thanks for the galaxy. Nah, I'm gonna do my.